Well, he was my husband, and he, I don't even know where to start, really. He was an amazing person. I didn't like him at first. How we met, he was at my house while I was trying to sleep, and he was with my best friend and her friend, and they had been at the bar, and they were being loud, and I had to go to work. So, long story short, my first experience with him was yelling at him, and he turned around and said, "Well, who are you?" I said, "Well, I'm the other person that lives here. Who are you?" And from that day on, he kept trying to get me to go on dates with him, and
He was obsessed.
Yeah. Do all this stuff for probably a couple months, and then we lost contact for about a year, and he found me on Facebook, and I said, "Oh yeah, give me a call sometime." I always thought he was a cool guy. I mean, who has a name Token? You know, they got to be pretty cool. And so he did. He called me. He called me every day for 6 months until I agreed finally. Okay, come down to Florida. We'll see how things go, and they went pretty good. So we were together for almost 5 years. Married for 3. Have a son and a little girl. He was a good person, all in all. Amazing. Miss him.
I was 19 years old when I got pregnant with him. I was very naive. I was raised in the mountains of Yosemite, right outside of Yosemite National Park, and there was very few people that lived there. And so I was isolated from the rest of the world. So I was very naive, though. The hippie era had come into our lands, and all the hippies were coming into the mountains to get back to nature. So I was kind of following in my own way the movement, and I met a man, his father, Kenneth Adams, who was quite an amazing man in those days. And so I thought I was in love, and we got together, and I got pregnant during the hottest year that they'd had in several years. I carried him through the hottest summer, sat in a falls called Cascadel Falls, in the pool there. I sat there almost every day trying to keep cool. And he put me through 4 days of labor, so I already knew there was something unusual about this child. He was born within 20 minutes. I had to hold him in to get to the doctor's office in Oakhurst, 7 miles away, and he was the last baby born in that town. And we couldn't come up with a name. They wanted us to have Kenneth III, which I thought was really too regal. So I wanted a hippie name, so I dedicated it to his grandfather, and it says, "To Ken Adams." Came out Token, so I've got my real unusual hippie name, and it was a dedication to the grandfather, which he felt very honored in that respect. And so we used to call him Smokin' Token because he could run faster than any kid I know. And he got teased a lot about his name, but he loved his name because it made him one of a kind. And he was carried in an Indian cradle basket woven especially for him. And we used to hang him up in a tree, and he would just hang there and be with nature. And so I think that was the beginning of him becoming a wildland firefighter, because he ended up becoming one with the forest, as us hippies would have said. And he was a very unusual child. As he got older, he would pick up wild animals with his hand, and he would place them in his, cup them with the other hand, and he would speak to them and breathe into his hand, and then he could take his hand away, and that wild animal would stay there. And it would not move. He would pick it up and put it on his shoulder, and it would stay with him until he placed it back down on the ground. So my son was always very gifted from the very beginning, but since we were young and naive, where you don't see it until you look back upon his life, he was a sneaky little booger. He would always hide his homework, or he would sneak off with his friends, but he was a very social person. He loved everybody, and everybody loved him. There was very few people that he had disputes with, and the wilder, the better. I would hear stories later on about what he would do as a teenager, which I think I would have killed him had I known. But he was a good boy. He was very mindful of his mother, which later on he became very sensitive to single mothers. And he always would help them out. And he was a servant of humans and had a very kind heart and always wanted to help people succeed, and always was positive, always was pushing people to their highest potential. And he went into the Navy and climbed the ladder in the Navy quite fast, because he would make friends out of his superiors, and then they would help lift him up as he was pushing forwards. And so he succeeded quite well during that time. He has escaped life several times. He had 9 lives. When he was doing learning hell attack, he was commuting back and forth quite a long drive to Pine Flat area. And one day he come around the corner, and a cement truck was tipping over and was sliding right at him. And it crushed the whole left side of his knees and his his collarbone, shoulder. He had to be pinned together. And I almost lost him one time to croup. And in those days we lived where there's no hospitals, and so you just went to the doctor at those times, and I almost lost him then. So he went back to North Carolina to Don Vaughn, Don Vaughn, which was a friend of his out of the Navy, and that was during the time that he didn't meet you till later, though, huh?
He was, because he moved to North Carolina with Donald in, November?
In November, I believe.
And I met him in January.
So he figured out that he could move up the ladder in the Forest Service if he was willing to relocate. And so he had started out there and managed to rehabilitate himself with his physical disabilities at the time, got back into the Forest Service. He went to Texas and was staying in Texas, and somewhere during that time, that's when the two of them had met. And all he would do is call me up going, I met this girl, blah, 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 blah. She's everything, and blah, 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 blah. And he would never stop talking about this woman. And he would ask me what to do, and I said, well, don't quit until she tells you to get lost, don't quit. And he says, I'm not going to. And so he stuck with it and met this wonderful young lady. And so they lived in poverty in Texas because he wasn't getting paid much in that section, was he? In that,
No.
that was it.
No,
And
got
from
pregnant, and
yeah,
it was
then she got-
it was rough. I think we went backwards. We went through all of our hard times first, and then things got better.
Didn't you have orange crates or something as tables and stuff? You didn't have anything.
We didn't
did
have
you?
anything. We had a bed in the living room to like sit on. We had just our 2 beds, 2 bureaus, maybe a couple pots, and that was about it.
So they started in the very beginning.
Yeah.
And then slowly, then he transferred and relocated to Florida. And for the life of me, I can't remember the name of the town. Where'd you go in Florida?
Bristol.
Bristol, Florida. And
Apalachicola National
yeah,
Forest.
Apalachicola. I love that name, Apalachicola.
Mhm.
That is just a beautiful name. And that's the first time I came at Thanksgiving,
Mhm.
right?
That's
The first time I met Heidi. And he was so right about her. Awesome woman. He couldn't have picked a more perfect partner than his wife, Heidi. And Tristan was already born when I got to meet Tristan. And so then from there, then he transferred to New Mexico and became captain. And had I known that I was going to lose my son, I would have never let him go. But that isn't us to see the future. So during that time when I got the call, she was pregnant with Isla. And I was planning on coming out on the 12th, 13th anyway, because the baby was going to be born. And her parents were coming out, so I would meet them for the first time. And we were going to celebrate all the birthdays, because Tristan's birthday is the 15th, and Isla's was expected to be the 17th, and his would be the 19th. And so we
All
were
these
going.
Virgos.
So we were all going to celebrate the Virgo birthdays, and then also catch the Balloon Festival.
Mhm.
And so when in the morning I had shut my phone off down that night and gone to bed, and in the morning when I got up, there was a phone call on there. So when I saw who it was from, I thought, oh my gosh, the baby's going to be born early. And then so I got on voicemail, and it was Heidi telling me that my son was missing. And hang on. I knew already, because my son was such a perfectionist, because my son was so subservient to his superiors, because he did everything so right, I knew that he was gone already. But as the morning went on, trying to get ready to get flight schedules and trying to get over there because I knew they hadn't found him, you start banking hope against hope on the human side of you, when spiritually I already knew he was gone, but I was in an argument with God and saying, no, you can't have him. And he kept saying, yes, I do have him. But I wouldn't listen to him. So then I went and came there on Sunday. Yep. Is that Sunday? and immediately started looking for my son. And Heidi's mom and dad were already there, and they were on the site already looking too. So I joined the search. But as things kept coming in different places we went, I already knew that it was a divine appointment that he had taken my son. Sorry, Lord. You know, I'm always fine with this when I'm out in a crowd, but not in front of film. I went out to the edge of the mesa, and I wasn't the only one that felt this unique energy out there. There was just this really unique, I don't know how to explain it, except that it was just a divine energy. And one of the rangers said something first, and they said, "Do you feel this? It's really unusual here." And then they started talking about it when I had already felt it, but I thought it was just me. And in the meantime, I'm trying to find the place where he had called his wife last. And I kept moving up the rocks to the point of the mesa. And I finally found a place where all the bars were on the phone, and it could have been the only place that he called, because he could not have kept a straight conversation without losing reception, except right there. So I stood out on the edge of that mesa, and I looked out at the most beautiful sight of creation you have ever seen in your life. And that energy kept saying to me, "Don't you understand, Edika? I have him. It's okay. I have him." And I kept going, "No, you cannot have him. He's mine. He's my only son. He's the one that's going to take care of me. You cannot have him." He said, "No, I have him." And at that point, I knew that for sure that my son was already gone. But we kept on looking, because until you find him, it was not definite. But all the stories that came in from Heidi herself of things he had done that morning, and the call in the afternoon of friends, good friends of his, that he saw every day, certain things that were said, certain things that were done. My son knew without knowing that it was his time. He was making closure. He was reaffirming and making sure that of his love for his wife. He was saying things to friends that all let me know that God had an appointed time and was taking him. It's a very spiritual place up there amongst the Jemez, and I wasn't even shocked when they found him. It took them 7 days to find him. It was almost to the exact hour of when they determined him to be missing. There was many spiritual things that happened since that time to let me know that he's okay. I met some wonderful people there. And so I plan to go back there because I feel my son everywhere there. But I can't describe my son any better than my daughter-in-law said on this paper here. And if she'd allow me to read it, or she could read it.
You can read it. I'll start. I won't make it through it. If you want.
This is a remembering statement that my daughter-in-law wrote. First off, I'm just going to say that my husband, Token Adams, was an amazing person. He was an engine captain for the Santa Fe National Forest with the Jemez Springs Ranger District. He had always protected others, whether it was serving in the U.S. Navy or fighting wildland fires. Token was one of the least selfish people I have ever met, and she couldn't have said that better. Always thinking about others before himself. He was very well known and liked by everyone in the community. He loved the Pueblo food, especially the Pueblo burgers, right?
Oh my
Yeah,
gosh.
the Pueblo
If you
burgers.
saw him, he was small, like he was skinny, but he could put down some food.
He could eat those Pueblo burgers. And I'm pretty sure he stopped in there every day for lunch. Yes, he did. Token loved to joke and play, but was also very professional when he needed to be. He always strived to be better, never taking shortcuts and always working hard for what we had. His family was number one, and that was it, definite. He idolized his family. We would always do something as a family on his days off, whether it was going to lunch or just a drive. He was a very dedicated husband and a father, and he was a very dedicated son. He would tell me every night that he loved me, and he would prove it every day. He would call me every Sunday, and I still wait for that phone to ring on Sunday. And but we just talk together in a different way now. But unfortunately, at the young age of 41, God decided he needed another angel. I know Token is always around watching over us, and I see him every day in our children. And I think this is just about the most awesome thing that you could have ever written.